Oh my God. I mean, yeah, and she has access to like this sustainable economy also. Like she's fellow with them space. She's like she's a freshman on this stuff. She goes out to those lawyers all over the country. We're like, oh, this is what we're doing here that's working, and just pretty rad. It's pretty rad. So it's not that much money.
Hello, seed lovers of the world. Welcome to Snake River Seed Cooperative Office. I'm Danny O'Malley, the Wholesale Accounts Manager and Operations Director. I've been working for Snake River Seed Co-op for just over a year, and I'm excited to announce some very exciting news. After slow and steady growth, we are excited to announce that we are now employee and grower owned. Woo! So with that, I'd like to start with a round of introductions of who I'm joined with today. Riley, you want to start us off?
Sure. So I am Riley Nye, and I am the Seed Production Manager and Finance Manager at Snake River Seed Co-op. And I first heard about Snake River Seeds many years ago when it was just getting started, when I was working on Casey's farm, Earthly Delights, and that was back in 2015, and I started packing seeds in 2016, and I've been working here ever since, and I just love it so much.
I'm Casey O'Leary. I started this co-op with Carrie Jones in, I think, 2014 legally we started. We were the Commonwealth Seed Library before that, and then we transitioned into Snake River Seed Co-op in 2014. That is how I became involved with the co-op.
I'm Kelsey Jae. Currently, I am a grower for the Snake River Seed Cooperative. I grow Blue Flax, just one little crop in my yard. And I started that after I did my internship with Casey as well. And I'm also the attorney for the Snake River Seed Cooperative. So over the years, I've worked on a lot of the contracts. And then when we made the decision to go grower and employee owned, I've been working on all the nuances of that.
Nice. And as I previously stated, I'm Danny O'Malley. My wife Lexi actually started out as an intern on Casey's farm several years ago, and that parlayed into us working on a farm, Onsen Farm, where we grew several seed crops as well. And then there was a job open, and I applied for it, and here I am now today, just over a year working here, helping guide the transition. So that's super exciting. So I'm hoping we could start out just with some storytelling, like kind of how, leading us up to how we got here today, talk about some of the, first ideas that got you into starting a seed company. I'm wondering if you could share, the name cooperative was in the company from the beginning, and we're just now transitioning, mm-hmm. And so obviously the vision has been there since the beginning.
Yeah, let's see. So we wanted it to be a seed library. The idea was this community stewardship of seeds, and the way that it turns out, capitalism is actually pretty useful, and we have a hard time with things that aren't capitalist in our just modern society. And so the library was just we could never get very much participation, so we decided to transition into a co-op model where we could contract seeds from growers, farmers who wanted to add seed production to their farm models, and we could offer those all together and package them and send them out into the world. And so, to be perfectly honest, our name was originally going to be Snake River Seeds, but that name is taken by a really awesome flaxseed company based out of Rupert, with whom we often get confused. And so when I had put in that name into the Secretary of State's office, they said we couldn't be that. And I had just been, Carrie and I had just been at the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance seed school at Onsen Farm, that was held at Onsen Farm in Buell. And we had seen Rowan White present there, and she was presenting on her seed cooperative called Sierra Seeds. And I remember there was this slide she showed of how much money they paid people who were growing tomatoes, and for the co-op, and I saw it, and it was, the prices were by the ounce, and I was like, hey, those are small, that's a small amount. We could do this with small growers and small amounts of seed. I mean, I had already been growing and selling my own seeds on my own farm, and I had small amounts. I had like ounces of things, ounces of tomatoes. That was a normal amount for me. So it was like, oh my gosh, there's a way you could do this, that somebody else is already doing this like this, you know. And so I got really excited about that. And that was actually why I had gone to that seed school, because I wanted to learn how to start working with other people. It was a lot of pressure to be the only one growing the seeds and selling them. Like if I had a crop failure or something like that, I felt like people were starting to rely on the seeds that I was growing, and I just didn't want to let people down. And I think as we all get bitten by the seed bug, we end up just, these little bundles are so precious, and they're so durable and amazing, but they're also easily lost if we don't care for them and steward them. And so the feeling of like I wanted to do right by the seeds by having more hands. And we always say here that the more hands who hold the seeds, the safer that they are. And so yeah, so we just started adding in other growers and you know, some of our most iconic local farmers, and started growing for us. And then we just, now here we are, and we're in a lot of, I mean, now we have, what do we have? Almost 60 people growing for the co-op all over the...
over 54.
Yeah, we were just looking at the map, like the difference from when it was first published.
Yeah, even back in 2018, I think it was like 29 growers, and now it's grown already to 54, and that's exciting. And a lot of the growers that started out are still with us, right?
Yeah, we've only lost a few as we're starting to figure out like who's going to be our initial owners. We've only lost a few of those very early growers, which is really cool, because this is not easy. You know, it's not easy to farm, so it's pretty cool to see how many people are still rallying.
I remember when it was the seed library. That's when I first like learned who you were. I remember reading the articles and stuff, and I think I went to a few of the events. And it was kind of confusing, you know, like you had indicated, switching from a library model to an actual business where there's transactions and you buy it and sell it, and that is just much more structured. Because I think it was like with the library, you could bring seeds and drop them off, and you could take other seeds, but there was this expectation that you would bring seeds back the next year to put them back in the library, like give some, take some. So I think to not have a like organized structure for that probably lost a lot of people.
Yeah, people don't want the, I mean, it's way easier to fork over $3.50 and never have any further obligation than it is to take these seeds. To just take these out and be like, oh, what if I mess it up and I don't know how to do whatever. And seed libraries all over the country struggle with that exact same thing. It's just really hard, you know. I mean, it's an awesome model, and I think, you know, if you can get to a point where it's not about returning the seed, it's just about getting the seed out into the world. I think that's good. But we were really, I don't know, we were just really focused on this idea that we wanted to grow more seed stewards, and we wanted people to learn how to do it. So we were really hardcore about, like, oh, if you take it, you better at least try to grow it. It's like people were like, I think we had like, oh gosh, there was maybe 3 or 4 people that would take stuff out and try it. And so,
but that educational piece has been huge for the whole time as the company's grown, is teaching people how to grow, how to let plants go through their full life cycle. And even just go to seed is one thing. A lot of people don't even know that. One of my favorite things is showing people in my garden is letting lettuce go to seed, because, you know, most people are used to seeing, if they ever see lettuce in the ground, you know, it's like a little bushy thing on the ground, and then you let it go to seed, it gets this tall, and it's got like crazy seed pods coming off. No one would know that that's lettuce, really. And so that part's been really fun with being in the co-op, is just watching how many people in just the gardening community have the language of seed saving now.
Yeah, for sure. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, many hands holding the seeds, and I remember back when I was working at Onsen and showed up to the grower meeting, the response was not as like encouraging as it is now. It seemed like the growers were a little bit more tepid to joining in a cooperative, and had lots of questions, and it seemed like we were testing the waters at that point. And that was probably 2016 or 2017. And so as you deal a lot with grower communication, I'm curious like how the responses have evolved over time to collective ownership.
Yeah, we've definitely seen over the years that more growers have become interested in co-owning Snake River Seed Co-op, just as they're getting a more clear picture of the finances, and as things look better and better every year, that definitely has encouraged people to want to co-own the business. So it definitely went through that early stages of a business where there's a lot of growing pains, and now we're getting through that and getting to the other side of that, which is exciting for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. It was encouraging we sent out a survey, and most of the survey responses we got back from our growers were very positive and very encouraging about the co-op development. So that makes me feel really good and excited about our future. And so, Casey, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how we got to this point where we decided it was the right time to transition.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with exactly what you just said, Riley, and you also said, Danny, like, we've talked about it for a lot of years. We've always tried to run it as though it were a legal cooperative, even though technically I am the only owner of it. It's technically a single member LLC under my name, and I own it. And so, but we've always tried to run it like a cooperative. We've always tried to involve growers in the process, and all the things. And we've always talked about changing into a cooperative model. And like the first grower meeting where we had Kelsey kind of talk us through, well, what would that look like? I think we were all just like, well, that sounds like a lot of paperwork. We don't have time for that. And so we kind of left it at that. And I think also people were worried about how much time and energy it might take, and about like potential conflicts maybe with the too many cooks in the kitchen sort of things. And just as we've gotten more growers who are more competent and have made this more of a part of their livelihoods or their lifestyles or whatever, they do have more skin in the game, and they do want to be a part of this. And so, and the finances are getting better, and we're not, I'm not, yeah, we're paying people to do work now. Yay! So yeah, I mean, I think it's just like it was a thing that has always been a desire or always been a principle, but the actual act of shifting into this legal thing, I think, happened in a combination of, let's see, you came on board, Danny, you have a serious interest in cooperative development, so it was like, oh great, here's somebody who actually like has mental time and energy to think about it. And then I got this, I decided I would like to take another job, and so I've taken a new job, and I'm doing teaching now. And so I was kind of going to step away from the day-to-day running of the business. And so it seems like, well, why would I own it if I'm not here? Like, it should be the people doing the work. That's always been have always operated on this producer-driven economic model. There's no reason why the people who are doing the work shouldn't own it. So it's just kind of this magical, I feel like, trifecta. Plus we're at the right time where, Kelsey, you have learned so much about how this works even, and we have a really amazing team, and we're like ready to roll.
Yeah, the ripeness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did seem to kind of all come together, coalesce around a good time. Like, Riley and Anna getting the books really clean, and like all the financial transparency. Like our grower meetings gave so much information to the growers about how the business was run, even though none of that's legally required. You don't have to tell your vendors how you run your business, and that's technically what the growers have always been, as vendors, really. But so that idea, everyone was really learning how the business was going and what the plans were. And one thing I noticed in the grower meetings in the past, when we would raise the issue of converting to a cooperative, was so people have so much respect and admiration for you and like what you built. A lot of people were worried about like taking from you. Be like, well, Casey worked so hard, and for a long time, your hours were uncompensated. You weren't getting paid for all the work that you were doing, and so people had this idea of like, well, it's your business, like you should reap what you sow. We don't want to own it, like it's yours. And that was the early on vibe. And you're like, no, I'm telling you, I want you to.
It would be better if
I'm okay
I
with this. But it wasn't right. And so yeah, after a couple years of the conversations, like bang, 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 all of that kind of hit at the same time.
Yep.
So it was time to move forward. And everyone seems to be really receptive to it now.
Yeah, a common question I get when talking about it is, well, first of all, people are, oh, you're not a cooperative? It's in your name. And they're like, so if you're transitioning, what is going to change? And that's been an interesting thing to consider. The answer is not as obvious as it might seem to that question, because the way that the business has been set up over the years is genuinely in that cooperative sense. And so, for example, the growers already feel like they're being listened to quite a bit. You could probably speak to that a little bit more, Riley. And so, you know, that feels really exciting, but mainly what I think about that is just the long-term security. It feels very nice to have the long-term security of going back to the many hands holding the seeds.
Yeah, I mean, the word cooperative means a lot of things to a lot of different people. In some states, you're not allowed to have the term cooperative in your business name unless you are formed as a legal entity that is regulated as a cooperative in that state. Cooperative means cooperation, like we were all taught that when we were toddlers, like how to share and how to cooperate and stuff. So it's a human activity on one hand. It's also a legal entity structure in some ways. It's a tax status in other ways. So there's a lot of things that cooperative means. And so what we had before becoming a legal cooperative is a culture of cooperation, which you can't force on people. And I do think, you know, things happen for a reason and the right time. For the last several years, the company has been building this culture of cooperating and respecting the employees and respecting the growers and, you know, being transparent and cooperating together to make the business grow. And so that was all established. And then we started to add on the legal framework and the structure changes. What happens a lot and where things fail is when people try to do all the paperwork first and then force that on the people and be like, here, you have to change your behavior to match what these legal documents say. It doesn't really work that way in a cooperative model. It's kind of like we all have to be in on the relationships and the culture, and then we can make the legal documents match what we're doing.
Yeah, another thing I think is really cool is that at the beginning we were talking about being just a producer-owned cooperative. I think it didn't even dawn on us that there was an option to be producer-owned and employee-owned. So I'm really excited just that over time that has become what it is now, what it's becoming.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a time when I thought it actually would be better for it to be employee-owned, specifically, and not producer-owned. And I'm so glad that we've come into this, and I think that's one of the most radical parts about this model, is that there aren't really models like this, that we are kind of inventing something that, at least in this world, it's really unique. It's really unique to have workers and producers who could, in theory, be at odds with each other in certain aspects of like a capitalist business model, but by saying, nope, we're going to make sure that we build processes and policies that make sure everybody's taken care of, then yeah, and that's what we've always wanted anyway. So it's really cool just to be able to put it down on paper and see it in, like, you know, legal forms and things.
Yeah.
It's mutual respect, you know, because why would the employees and the farmers be opposed to each other? Like, what is that? It's like, well, in let's just say a typical business or a conventional model, the employees, in order for them to make more money, you have to take money in the budget from something and give it to something else. So be like, well, let's pay our vendors less so the employees can have more, or vice versa. And I'm just saying that for comparison purposes. But here, what I've noticed in talking to everybody over the years is the growers and the employees respect each other so much and really, really, truly understand that it takes all of everybody working together. Like the growers wouldn't have a market for their seeds if it wasn't for all the work that the employees were doing to make this business work. And the employees wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for all the growers growing all these different seeds. And so that mutual admiration, all centered around seeds and the bioregional seed shed, like the theory and everything that everyone's committed to, creates this really cool recipe for people to work together cooperatively like that. And yeah, I'm used to seeing, you know, worker cooperatives as an option and producer cooperatives as an option. But, you know, through my research, I haven't really found a cooperative that has producers and workers that aren't the same. And of course, I'm sure there's something out there. Just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not out there. But what we're working on is trying to have a model that has two different kinds of owners, all working cooperatively, and then making sure we're not pitting them against each other. You know, that was something we talked about early on when we were talking about like the voting structure for running the company. Is, are we going to have designated employer seats and then designated grower seats and try to have a balance? And we're like, you know, no, because then that indicates that the growers and the employees have different interests that are probably competing, and that we're going to have a vote structure set up so the employers and the growers can vote against each other. And so that we made a choice to not do it that way. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and in the bylaws, that seems very clear, and it seems very harmonious, the relationship between the employees and the growers, and it seems like everybody's voice is being heard very well in the bylaws. I'm excited to put them into practice.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm curious, as you were writing these bylaws, where you look to for inspiration or like historical context to help create that kind of more unique model.
Yeah. Well, a few places. So I've done a lot of work with nonprofits and corporations over the years. So, you know, I had a nonprofit bylaws, I had, you know, a corporation bylaws, and I work with benefit corporations a lot. So we can talk about that distinction. So I had those templates. And then I'm a fellow with the Sustainable Economies Law Center, also known as SELC. I joined that program the same year that I did this internship with Casey when I was just restructuring my career and stuff. And they are brilliant lawyers and leaders in the sustainable and regenerative economy and bringing ownership down to the people doing the work and just doing a lot of healing. And anyway, they have some great minds working on legal forms and templates. And so I got a lot of information from SELC, including something that they just published a few months ago, the Worker Self-Directed Nonprofit Bylaws. So this idea that like in the nonprofit industrial complex, you know, you still have a lot of hierarchy where there's a lot of workers doing the work, but it's like the board members who tend to be, you know, maybe in the wealthier retired class of people sort of doing top-down instructions, and the employees are not given as much control over how the organizations run. And that's been seen by people for a long time. So they have these worker self-directed nonprofit bylaws that I used. And obviously we're not a nonprofit, this is a for-profit business model, but a lot of those decision-making concepts are incredibly relevant. So, you know, Danny, we worked together on reading those and picking out the parts we liked and pulling that into our benefit corporation concept. So basically I had like 5 or 6 different templates from different types of projects that I've used, and then I just had to kind of combine them together and take the good parts out of each of them.
Yeah, and it's been fun. Riley and I have been, you know, trying to implement aspects of our new governance structure and just general operations, just in considering the worker self-directed bylaws. It seems like there's a lot in there talking about dynamic governance, maybe touching on sociocracy a little bit, and so we've been like pulling that into our business a little bit already, just kind of in a soft practicing way now that we're about to transition, just with like circle structures and how decisions are made and consent, and that's exciting to me. That's one of my favorite parts about this transition, is getting to really practice a kind of a new form of governance for us.
Well, one thing we did too, I love to play the what if game with my clients and be like, okay, well, what if we're sitting in a meeting and this happens? Like, what do you envision going down in that situation? And so we had a lot of meetings. Like, how do you guys actually run the business? Like, what do you do? Okay, we're going to have a board now. Do you think all of a sudden you're going to like having the board tell you what to do? And how's that going to work? Does the board even know what to do? So we did a lot of like, how do we want this business to be run? Where are the potential conflicts? Because there's always, whenever you've got a group of humans working on something, there will be conflict. We don't all disagree, or we don't all agree all the time. So trying to anticipate all those touch points for conflict, and then plan our documents, which just is an agreement. That's all documents are, just like we agree that this is the process. So it'll be interesting because we are totally experimenting, but we didn't create everything from scratch. There's other really smart people that have come up with ideas that we're gleaning from.
Well, and there's a huge, long history of agricultural cooperatives in this country, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
There are so many examples of farmers coming together to process and package and distribute their products.
Yep.
So that is happening. And then there's a huge and growing resurgence of worker co-ops as business as usual is just getting more and more corporate dominated and very anti-worker, and workers are losing wages and they're losing rights and all these things. And so there is this great model to reestablish these worker co-ops and stuff. So that's happening on the one hand. Agricultural producers cooperatives have there's a long tradition of those.
Yeah.
Just how to stick them together, that's exciting.
Well, and what's different too about the Snake River Seed Cooperative from an agricultural cooperative is there's how many different crops are there? The seeds weigh different, they have different retail values, they're grown different, they have different costs to put in. Whereas like if you were a potato co-op or, you know, everyone's growing the same crop that has the general same value, it's easy to allocate, okay, well you put in 10,000 pounds, you get, you know, X percentage of the total. Whereas here, we had a lot of conversations, and this is where Anna and Riley and the accountant, we were going back and forth on, okay, how do we noodle these numbers to make sure that, you know, the hyssop grower and the squash grower are all compensated fairly, even though those
very
seeds...
excellent example, actually. You probably didn't know that, but that's an extremely valuable example.
Hyssop's right there. Yeah, so it's been a fun brain teaser, I think. But, you know, your point that this has been happening in a lot of ways for a long time was reassuring to me, is that it can be done, it will be done. Humans have always worked together. It just... I have a question. I think that could help kind of put a lot of this stuff in context. So the tagline or the you know, marketing catchphrase for the Snake River Seed Cooperative is building a robust bioregional seed shed, right? So what does that mean to this company, and like how has that transitioned over the last couple years to where we are now, expanding ownership to the growers?
You want to take it, or?
Sure. Yeah. So it's growing instead of building. That
Okay.
I also used to say building when I first started working here, and I learned that it's growing a robust bioregional seed shed. And the reason why that's important is because food sovereignty is a major issue. Obviously, we all know that the large corporations have really consolidated, and our food is being produced by smaller and smaller quantities of businesses, and overall that's not safe. We've seen through COVID, we've seen that the supply chains are having issues, and obviously that's a little scary. So I know for me personally, what brought me to farming and to gardening and to Snake River Seed Cooperative is the idea that we can all come together to grow food and grow plants and increase the amount of plants that are in our region, as well as increase the amount of seeds that are adapting to our region.
Yeah. And I think like one thing that we, you know, kind of I had touched on in the beginning of this, that it felt scary for me to have to try to be the one growing stuff, and kind of what you were getting at, Riley, this idea of there's isolation distances, there's, you know, in order to save good seed, reliably true to type seed, off of, like, from many crops that we eat, you need a certain amount of distance, and you need a certain number of plants. That takes a lot of space, and I'm an urban farmer, many of us are urban farmers, so having more people who can do this, and more growers that are in, you know, growers in urban areas, growers in rural areas, just being able to have more people doing the work and learning the skills of growing the seeds makes it possible to have more biodiversity in our bioregion. And then when we always say, if you don't have local seeds, you do not have a local food system. And so, like, if we are serious about doing that, this is foundational to that work, is figuring out how to get these seeds adapting to our bioregion all the time, adapting to our bioregion, which is obviously as important now as it ever was, and it will continue to be more important moving forward with climate change. And that we take a lot of hope in the work of working with seeds for a lot of different reasons. One is, like you said, that we can, by doing this work, we are creating greater food sovereignty in our bioregion. Another thing is that it feels really scary sometimes, climate change and what's coming down the pipe, and just the chaos of our world over these last few years especially. And it feels like the idea of planting a seed, nurturing it, allowing it to take in the information from its environment, put that information into its seeds, and literally change its DNA to continually adapt to something that's changing, is like, oh, yay, and we can do that every year. every year. It's something we can do physically with our bodies, with our hearts, with our minds.
It's what we're doing as a business.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what you just described. That adaptation is
Mm-hmm.
like, we're doing that right now.
It's a good metaphor.
Yeah, totally.
I always just the reap what you sow thing too is really fun to think about. Yeah, as I've learned more about growing seeds, it's just made me realize, like, if everything hit the fan and our economy crumbled and no more trucks were coming in and we had no more food, like, how would we eat? And obviously most people wouldn't. And then there would be all the chaos of people trying to figure out where to get their food and stuff like that. So by teaching people how to grow food in general, that's, a major, major step. And I think our local food economy has done so much educational work over the last several years. Just more and more people growing urban farms and gardens and everything. And so the Snake River Seed Cooperative, teaching people about that next phase of, like, okay, cool, like, you can plant a seed, but where did that seed come from? What happens if you can't go to the nursery and buy a seed pack? Like, one thing that you told us on our internship, at the Earthly Delights Farm, was included in the internship is a lifetime supply of free seeds. And I was like, damn, that's like quite the perk, And then you explained, well, because you're going to learn how to save seeds. So you'll always have seeds if you learn how to save them. I just thought that was funny. But it's true. There's like millions and millions of seeds. Every single gardening year, you can get millions and millions and millions of potential new plants if you just know how to do it. Building resilience for people to take care of themselves and take care of each other and share.
Well, and one thing I've been thinking a lot about, one of the questions you had posed, Danny, was about what does the community get out of us making this transition, And one thing I've been thinking a lot about is that consumers can basically give, like, they don't have to think about this part necessarily. By going to the nursery and buying packets of seeds from us, it allows them to sort of like take that one off their plate of things they have to think about, while all of these really smart, passionate, forward-thinking people are doing active work to figure out how to solve some of the biggest problems with agriculture and some of the most pressing challenges of our time. And I think by allowing more of us to physically own the business, I think you do act differently as a business owner than you do as a vendor or an employee or whatever. It's like we have so much to contribute, all of us. And by giving people the opportunity to hold this business, it allows us to take this and run with it, run wild with it, and take it into solving some of these bigger problems. And and I think that is something that the community gets out of it. Is you don't have to figure this out. You just support us by buying these awesome locally adapting seeds, and we'll put our best minds and our best hearts toward figuring it out.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, reimagining the future is like kind of daunting sometimes and kind of scares a lot of people away, I'll just keep going with my conventional ways over here. And so I like what you're just saying. It speaks to like, it makes me feel like we're like a guild of artisans, crafting and supplying something for the community. And that makes me very excited. So that, I've definitely, and my partner Lexi has definitely felt like overwhelmed, like, oh, we need to create a new model. And like then all this weight all of a sudden is resting on your shoulders, I need to know how to take care of seeds and can food and build my house and do all this stuff, and that feels so overwhelming. And so it's so reassuring to just know that there's people out there focused on these sort of, visions, and we're one of them.
Yeah, I'd like to share with you guys something I've shared with Danny before. It's a visual of a table. You might remember this about the companies. So currently 80% of the world's seed is owned by 3 companies. And what I think is kind of funny is that our first hired bookkeeper named Colleen, she also worked at a furniture company. And one time they built a 3-legged table and a customer complained because it fell over. So I like to imagine, okay, so if 80% of the world's seed is owned by 3 companies, I imagine them as the legs of the table. and just how wobbly that is. And the food system is, you know, the tabletop. So when I imagine our system, where we have all of these different growers, about 50 different growers all over the Intermountain West, I like to imagine where they're located on the map, and everyone is a table leg going up, just holding our food system there.
That's
That
nice.
is a good
Cool
visual.
visual.
That's solid table.
A massive table.
Yeah.
With lots of yummy food.
Yep.
So why the focus on the Intermountain West? Why stay in the bioregion?
Science.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was. I mean, I think like, I'm really influenced by that kind of small is beautiful mindset. That to me is, I don't like endless growth. I find it to be gross.
Endless growth is gross.
Yeah, that's how I feel. And so, you know, we don't need to be giant, and we don't need to be everything to everyone. And by focusing in our area, like bloom where you planted, right? Like do it where you are. And one of the things that I think we all know to be very true from doing this work is that we're doing this here, and we are a part of this massive network of people doing this exact same thing in all these other communities all over the country and all over the world. So it's like, yeah, we're doing it in our work, we're doing it in our world, but we are actively sharing seeds and knowledge and spreadsheet help and you know, stuff with other people who are working on the same stuff where they are. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. So it's like, we have our little network of all the seeds here, and we have our seed stewards and our you know, our growers and our employees who are working on this here, and then right next to us we have these other communities that are doing the same work. And we're that in that table metaphor, there's a lot of there's just so much security in that web. For all of us.
And tighter relationships. You know, as the accounts manager, wholesale accounts manager, if I'm talking to a potential new account, they love hearing that we're staying in the bioregion. And like almost immediately there's a warmth there. Like, oh, these seeds are really local. You know, that term is like bandied about so regularly now. That it seems almost like a cliche, but when I say no, these seeds were grown, you know, and stewarded by like our bioregion, the relationship is just immediately so much tighter, and that's really special.
Yeah, we don't all want to, I think, you know, like, we want unique individual cultures. We want that. We want our place. We want to know where we are. We want to be of a place where we are. Like, we want a connection to the world that's immediately around us. I think it's a basic human desire to feel connected to where we are. Yeah, and to just, you know, drive through the drive-thru at McDonald's, you like miss out on that, you know. It could be anywhere.
Yeah, I also think staying within the Intermountain West just respects the natural boundaries too. I always tell people that I don't know how to farm anywhere else other than Boise. I have no idea how people do it in other places. Even Salt Lake or Sandpoint is very different than Boise, and we do consider that still our bioregion, and we learn from each other. Yeah, every place is different for gardening and farming.
Yeah, and then when you think about like the Southeast, what business, I mean, yeah, what
Well,
business do we
when you
have?
go and buy seeds that were grown in Virginia, or you know, something like that, and then you try to plant them in your high mountain, high elevation desert climate of Boise where there's no water and forest fire smoke, and you wonder like, why did I fail at gardening? Like, I can't grow anything. It's like, well, maybe the genetics of the plant, you know, you didn't really stand a chance. And so by having the seeds every single generation, they get more and more adapted to our air quality, our water conditions, our temperature conditions, the soil microbes, you know, whatever, all the things that go into making a plant thrive. It just gets better and better and better. And then you save, like you guys do, you save the best seeds from those best plants every year. And so every year it just keeps getting better. And so, yeah, the Snakes River Seed Cooperative is just going to keep improving just by its own nature. It's really neat. And having the owners be able to own the business and the employees be able to own the business, everyone's just so invested in that growth and that improvement because they get a piece of it.
Yeah,
they're not just doing it for someone else.
Right. That reminds me of what I was briefly touching earlier about how we've been inspired by sociocracy to sort of implement circles, and it makes you feel more empowered to put your idea out there and try it out. It's not a top-down system. That's something that we really worked on in the bylaws, like revising the bylaws to not make it seem like we are now beholden to what the board of directors is telling us. You know, the farmers circle is an autonomous circle, obviously with a link that communicates with other circles, but you know, we really wanted to make sure that the person directly involved with the work has the ability to make the changes and is responsible for that work. And I feel like that's one of the best ways to remain adaptable and to keep the ideas flowing and changing, so we don't, you know, so we stay relevant. And
well, a big part of it is distributing power properly. And you know, you'd be fooling yourself if you didn't think that there was going to be power battles at some point. Like, there's always going to be people wanting things their way and trying to figure out how to get people to do what they want. You know, it's just at the fundamental core of like group decision making. And so in a lot of traditional business models, you know, you have even that term directors, like we direct the action, like we tell you what to do, this is the direction that we're going. And in a cooperative, it's like each member has one vote and then we all get to decide. And so that, like, think of opposite end of the spectrum of like total tyranny and then total pure democracy. Neither one of them are quite that effective, you know, because this model is we don't know all the information. Like this person could just be completely operating in a vacuum of power trip. On this side, nothing ever gets done, right? Because nobody's actually making any decisions and we're constantly debating everything for forever. And so it's like we're somewhere along that spectrum of the people with the talent and the skills to make certain decisions are revered for those talent and skills, but everybody else has a place to throw in their ideas too. And so that cooperative model of group decision making that still honors experience and expertise, it hopefully makes better decisions. At least that's the theory. But it takes a lot of cooperation and mutual respect, and you have to opt into that system. And so that's why you're kind of selective on who gets to be the owners and the first couple rounds of ownership and stuff is people that are already dedicated to that concept, so they agree to that model.
Yeah, I also like thinking about who, like with this decision, who does it affect the most? Does it affect the growers the most or a certain employee the most? And that person's feedback or their opinion should matter the most since they're affected the most. I really like that.
Definitely. Yeah, you avoid the unintended consequences problem that happens in business a lot. Or, you know, we selected a benefit corporation model also because that legally requires that the company, when making decisions, considers all sorts of stakeholders. Lots of people that are affected by the business, not just profits for the shareholders in this next quarter, but like long-term financial success of the business combined with environmental impact, combined with impact on the workers, combined with the community. So you have to be thinking about what is best in more ways of looking at what that word means. And so the more people that you have participating in that conversation, the more likely you are to be doing good work.
Yeah. Very curious.
How many people are going to be owning it in this first go round?
15.
Yeah, I mean, that's to be determined. We are limited by some, pretty strict securities laws on how many people we can bring on to the cooperative, depending on how we structure the offering. So it's a pretty small number, just a small group of current growers and current employees.
But then
every year we can do more.
Yeah. So it will take us a few years to get to the point where every single current grower has the opportunity to be an owner. But once we're at that point, then I mean, we kind of have had the conversation of making sure that we don't do anything drastic until every current grower has had the opportunity to become an owner. We don't want to make decisions when people who have had a seat at the table this entire time don't legally have a seat at the table in this model. They never legally had a seat at the table before anyway, but yeah.
I mean, they never did. It was always, as the single owner you know, it was always on your plate to make all the decisions, but you sought that feedback from everybody, and that vibe will definitely continue. The other thing that's interesting too that came up was, you know, some of the growers, a subset of the growers will get to be owners of the cooperative, but there's still going to be, most of the growers aren't owners, but they are still going to be part of the business by, you know, by their grower contracts. You know, nothing's really going to change for them practically on the ground. They'll still be able to participate in lots of ways, and some of them won't want to.
Yeah,
you know, that's something that has come up over the years too. Is business ownership is a lot of responsibility, and you know, there's tax consequences to owning a company. You know, it's something that you have to make a conscious choice to do, to buy into a business. And some, you know, most of these farmers, they have their own business. They're farmers, so whatever their company is, they've already got that business. And so for them to join another one in addition to what they're already doing is an additional burden. So there's trade-offs for everybody. And same thing with employee ownership. You know, there's a difference between being able to just clock in, do your work, clock out, no pressure, you know, on how to run the company, or what happens if things go down. So becoming an owner and having a stake in the outcome of the financial success of a business is also a trade-off. So
the future is exciting.
The future is now. Is there anything we wish that someone watching this video heard us say that we did not say?
I know, I've been trying to think about that too.
I mean, I haven't legally nerded out at all.
Do you want to?
I don't know. I can't tell. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah. We could do like...
I kind of said I didn't want to, but now I'm like...
We could do like and now it's time for Kelsey's Nerd Out session.
Gonna get 30 seconds to nerd out. I think like a few minutes on this legal structure would be cool. We haven't really talked, we hinted on it a little bit. Because it is neat. And it has...
Nerd.
What's that?
Release the legal nerd.
Yeah.
The legal nerd is itchy.
That stays in the video.
Okay, well yeah, so is the camera rolling? Okay, so what we all decided after a few years of talking and then a few months in the summer of doing research on different models was we decided that we were going to form a benefit corporation. So that discussion was, is it going to be an LLC versus is it going to be a corporation? Is it going to be a traditional agricultural cooperative? So we had all these different entity structures, and we did a lot of research. We watched some videos from the Sustainable Economies Law Center, read a lot of things, and ultimately decided on a benefit corporation because it had the most flexibility to set up the board structure the way that we wanted, and the commitment to the external stakeholders was an improvement upon like a regular corporation. And we didn't want to do the LLC because of the tax issues. So we decided on benefit corporation, and then we decided to be taxed as a cooperative. So our bylaws had to include a lot of different information to see how we were going to comply with the tax requirements. And that's when we got all nerdy on, well, how do the growers get paid? How do we collect money based on different kinds of seeds? And how do the employees get paid? So we like noodled on that for a long time.
Oh, I have more questions too.
Yeah. So we've got lots of emails going back and forth with our accountant who has never done a subchapter T cooperative as a benefit corporation model either, but she's very intelligent and we're all learning together. And then the other thing too we talked about was like, what is the buy-in amount? You know, like you value a company and you set the price for the shares and you make people buy them. That's not that simple for this company, where we have a lot of different economic models of the people that are getting involved. There's people that are, you know, lower income or higher income, and some people can afford more. But and one thing we're insistent upon was that it doesn't matter how much money you have, your voice still counts the same as a person who doesn't have as much money. So trying to figure out like a sliding scale buy-in that everybody still has this equity with their voice was an interesting piece too, which I think is going to play out pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm proud of that part.
Yeah.
Sliding scale buy-in and one member, one vote, period. Doesn't matter whether you put it in the very bottom or the very top or whatever. And
not making distinctions between employer issues or grower issues, because that would create conflict that might not already be there. You know, it would indicate that these people need to be opposed to each other somehow. The other thing too we talked about was when somebody leaves the cooperative, if there's ever a sale. You know, if there's ever a sale of a cooperative, the or if there's ever a sale of a business, it really just the profits at the end of the sale get distributed according to the ownership. But in this situation, we're like, well, what if somebody who was around for the first 10 years stops farming, and then 10 years later the business sells, and they get nothing? And so that was another factor that we worked into the bylaws about how everybody that's ever been involved will be counted when it comes time to distribute proceeds from sale, if that ever happens.
And we feel like that will make the business more safe too.
Yeah.
Like, it's if at some point some small group of people who is owning the business wants to sell because they could then enrich themselves, because we're selling at this point, the business is being sold for a pretty modest sum.
Yeah.
Compared to what it's worth, and then obviously it's just going to get better, so then it's going to be worth even more. But as an incentive to sort of keep it in the hands of people and not sell out to some external entity is really important, and is really important to me to know that like I want to pass it on to you all. I don't want to pass it on to whatever.
One of those 3 seed
Yeah.
conglomerates. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't want that to happen. I want it to stay with local people in a grassroots way. So I like that that's in the bylaws. And I feel like, too, that gives us all the incentive to just stick with it and, like, take care of it,
Yeah, and what's been cool for me is talking with the financial people about how to calculate the patronage, and how do we, so patronage is a cooperative concept that you reap what you sow. Basically, like, you get out in proportion to what you put in. But how do we what is the algorithm? Like, how do we calculate the patronage for all these different types of seed growers, knowing that a pound of broccoli seeds weighs different than a pound of hyssop seeds, and having to have some different metrics. So you and Anna putting your heads together to come up with a formula that worked based on your current accounting practices and what could be changed was really cool. And I know our accountant, Karis, really thought that was interesting too. Just like, yeah, that looks like it works, having to do the research. And
the financial team in this is just absolutely stellar.
For sure. And it's just, it's so much innovation, and one thing that I do when I practice law, obviously it's my job to know what the rules are, and how can I help my clients get what they want within the scope of what the rules allow. And knowing when there's a gray area, how do you stay on the safe side of the gray area? Like, sometimes it's not exactly clear, is this right or is this wrong? Now, obviously, we're not going to do something that's obviously wrong. But if we're trying to do something that's a little bit innovative, a little bit unique, and the language of the law doesn't have a perfect example for that, we have to be like, well, does this make sense? And so you get your legal advisors and your accountant advisors to be like, yeah, we read the rules and this seems, I think it'll work, so we're kind of practicing. That's why they call it the practice of law, is you just do it. And so it's just been such a fun challenge working with everybody to see how we can set up this business in a way that's going to produce the results that you want.
Yeah, and we had a really good steering committee
for sure,
formed of growers and employees, and just looking over bylaws, revising them lots of times.
That was the most engaged group of people I've had reviewing bylaws that I've sent. I always send my clients the bylaws and go through and read them and be like, does this make sense to you? What do you think? These guys were like reading every line, asking really good questions. And I felt like every iteration we did make real changes.
Definitely.
Because someone's like, I don't like this part, or this doesn't work for me, or is that necessary? And when a lot of lawyers use templates. You rarely start from just a blank piece of paper and start typing. You usually get templates or models from past clients or from friends or something like that. So, it did make us challenge, like, okay, so this paragraph is a very common paragraph that's in most bylaws. It's very standard. Does it work for us? Is it mandatory? Do we have to do it this way? Can we do something different? So it was pretty cool going through section by section and creating a model that will work for this company and this situation.
All right.
Farmers and bylaws.
Well,
thanks for indulging the lawyer nerd out.
I feel like it would probably be good to do a little closing go-round. Who wants to start?
Who wants to start the final round?
What are you excited about moving forward?
I can start. I have been to use some, like, to wax poetic, I would say, I have definitely felt the call from the earth that I need to be in service to helping the earth heal, helping the greater community of humans heal, and I feel so connected to that in this work here. And so what I'm really excited about is just allowing that to bloom inside of myself through this work as we just move into the future. And then the specific thing I'm excited about the cooperative development is being able to practice some dynamic governance or sociocracy or just interesting ways of managing a business. That I feel like we just spent a long time discussing why our model is relatively unique. Obviously, historical context shows that there have been many examples that we are on the shoulders of, but in some ways it does feel like it's unique. Riley and I are co-managing the business, and that's very exciting. Tons of decision making together feels really good. So just to dial that process in is what I'm most excited about. Mm-hmm. Giving voice to making sure everybody's voice is heard and allowing us to have enough autonomy to feel like you can breathe and move and make decisions and get creative. Yeah.
That's cool. Going in order? Okay. Well, I think what really excites, I love learning, and I love putting myself in situations where, like, I have to learn something new, being surrounded by other really smart people that are just trying to do awesome things. When I went out on my own and started my own law practice, my like mission was to help awesome people do awesome things. Like, if I don't like you and I don't like what you're doing, I don't want to have to do it. And it sounds kind of bratty, you know, but that's what I wanted. And so this whole project has just been a lot for me, like intelligence wise, research wise, legal skills wise, having courage and taking a risk, and, you know, like not getting scared, like, oh, this is maybe uncharted territory, a little bit able to shy away from it. I had to really like step in to show up for people that I really respect, you know, like you. Like, I've looked up to you for a very long time, Casey, so being able to be a part of like transitioning what you've created into this new big wonderful thing. And you know, Riley, you've been my friend for a really long time too, and Danny, I've known you a long time. I just feel like really good being a part of this team and being able to contribute in my own way. So I'm excited to see it work, and just to be a part of watching it bloom, you know, and see what happens. Mm-hmm. It's exciting. Mm-hmm.
Can I go next? Sorry.
Sure.
To jump around.
Yeah,
you can go next.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel most excited for the future of Snake River Seeds being here. I just feel like I was farming for the last 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, and stopping farming was a big decision, and it really was because Snake River Seed Co-op was just pulling more and more of my energy and my time. So my farm really was struggling because of that, as well as myself. I really needed to let go of it in order to be fully here at Snake River Seeds. And the biggest reason why I made that decision is because of the potential that is here, the opportunity, the possibilities that are right in front of us as we all come together, creating this wonderful business with the growers and the coworkers here. It's really amazing, and it makes me feel like I can make a difference.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Oh.
Yeah. I think for me, like, I love that this is where we are. For those of you out in TV land who don't know about the history of this business, this is a pretty swanky situation that we're in right now. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing. Like, we get to sit with all of these amazing seeds, and I was just looking at this little one right here. This is the very first one, the first seeds that I ever saved. I call them Sexy Mama Collard Greens, and I didn't know what I was doing, and they crossed up with kale, and it was like my very first year farming, and they just were so neat, and I really wanted to, it was amazing that one plant could make, like, I don't even know, 5,000 or something seeds. And I think sometimes when I think about these seeds specifically, I think about how many thousands of years that humans have been stewarding these seeds, and how really intense voyages and like very, you know, just a lot of history in all of these seeds, and all the beautiful and the horrible. They have persisted through the loving care of humans as well as their own life force, and I think like this work has been so special for me, and it's been so healing for me, as you said, and I think it's just really hard to figure out how to take the beauty of this, that like simple act of planting and tending and harvesting and sharing seeds, and then figure out how that fits into this weird modern capitalist world. And so I think obviously this business is not perfect. We've made lots of mistakes. We'll make lots of mistakes moving forward. But it's like, it's just the most, I've put everything I have into like doing right by these little things, you know? And by all the people who have stewarded them. And I just feel like that is what we're here to do, and we're doing it well. Mistakes and all, we're doing it well. So that's what I'm the most excited about, is that we're taking we're caring for our little seed friends, and like making sure that by stewarding them, we are stewarding our healthy human communities as well. Anyway, thank you all for doing this work and having this conversation, and thanks to Mary Kay for filming and all that. Thanks to all of you out there watching for supporting this little tiny seed of a business as it's grown into a much bigger seed of a business. And I hope that you enjoy staying with us on the rest of our journey. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
In seed solidarity!
She's so pumped. She's like, I struck go. You gonna come with us, Max?
All right. Take care, everyone.
Good night. Nice meeting you.
I like how you